Concepts like neoliberalism get thrown around all the time, but it's hard to grasp exactly what they mean without understanding how their proponents use these terms to make capitalism seem less evil than it is, let's say. Thankfully, we have experts like Carlos Maza to show us just how much they shape our society. Carlos is here with me now to talk about his latest explainer video on neoliberalism. And I must say, it's an explainer with humor, which is my absolute favorite type. Carlos is a video producer and media critic. He created and hosted Strikethrough, a video series at Vox.com, which focuses on media and journalism in the age of Trump. He also developed and launched a video series on media criticism at our favorite place, Media Matters for America. Carlos uses video to combine timely research-based media criticism with comedy and pop culture, and I might add myself, fabulousness, to break through the noise of the mainstream cable news to help viewers better understand what is happening in our world. Carlos, thanks for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Great intro.
Did I get it all right? That's what you're doing, right? That is what we do.
Yeah, it was at Media Matters and then at Vox, and then I went independent because after a while you just want to do your own thing and not have to answer to anybody, which is like, I feel like a very socialist anarchist mentality of like, I don't like having a boss anymore, so I'm gonna go solo.
Well, that's terrific. You built up your thing, when in places where they had a big audience, and then you just took the party on the road, which is one of the great things about the internet. If they leave it and not destroy it, you can go on the road and be financially self-supporting. Is that right?
Yeah, it's great. The one drawback is that it requires me to work on YouTube, which is like an evil company that's destroying the country. And I hope that the next
like the one that we're on right now, like the
yeah. I hope the next step is that I destroy this platform as well. But yes, it is nice to be able to make independent stuff and like play in the master's playground before you eventually use their tools to destroy their house.
One platform takedown at a time, please.
Got it. That's fair.
I'm kidding. We were here at Twitch and we're on Facebook. We haven't been, thrown out from there. I think, here's my theory, and not to get too far off, but these companies like YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch and all the rest like to keep progressives and progressive comedians on a little bit so that they can have plausible deniability that they are a fascist fascist corporate organizations. Anyway, did I just say that out loud? I mean,
100%. I'll say this so that you don't have to. All these companies make money on the far right. They don't make money on leftist comedians because the easiest way to get views is to say racist, bigoted shit and appeal to people's worst impulses. And so if you look at YouTube's earning stuff, a huge set of their engagement does not come from like the Young Turks or us. It comes from Ben Shapiro types, Dennis Prager types, like the worst people on the platform. So yeah, their business model is fascism, and we can play for now, and there'll become a point where it's off with their heads too, and I will be leading the revolution when that happens, I hope.
We'll have to make our own YouTube, BlueTube, we'll call it.
Can't wait.
Or something else. Carlos, why do you think, we were just talking on the Twitch chat before this about the psychology behind like emotionally laden things like the right wing, like you just said, racism, hate, bigotry, all of that. And on the left, it seems like the way to engage people and gain a big audience is using humor. Have you found that to be accurate?
100%. I mean, it sort of feels like it's a rigged game in a sense, because the way that our brains are set up, we just have such a natural primal response to fear and otherization. And it's not because we're bad people, but just because like our lizard brains are trained to focus more on potential threats. And so if you want to build an audience, it is much easier to build an audience by saying there are these outsiders who are coming to get you, fear them, defend yourself, listen to me, only I can protect you, than it is to say, we're kind of all in this together and our fates are intertwined. There's just like no primal fear response in that way. And so
yes,
I think the reason you see so many
love and brotherhood don't bring up that
it really just doesn't
items response.
In a philosophical sense, like humans are gregarious. Like we are hardwired to love each other and to bond. But in terms of what gets our attention and what makes us react, especially in terms of media, it's fear and bigotry much more, which is why I think you see such an emphasis on like theatrics on the YouTube left and like in sort of in leftist politics in general, is that you need humor and art and aesthetics to get people to listen for long enough and to like lower their guard for long enough to consider compassion and solidarity as an option, and to like, and it's more than that, to like realize that they're being duped by a very effective propaganda machine. Where if you're like a Steven Crowder type or a Ben Shapiro type, really all you have to ever say is, aren't these people different? Aren't they so unlike you? Aren't you so much better? Don't you hate them? Shouldn't we destroy them? And it's just it's a very cheap and efficient way of making media. Where leftists, like, there's a reason that so much leftist thinking is mired in like philosophy and sort of like archaic prose, because it does require a little bit more thought and compassion and slowness to build like durable senses of solidarity and brotherhood and sisterhood with people who might not initially look like you and might kind of look different at first glance.
Carlos, how did you get started? You clearly have talent in, like, I was like, oh, did he start as a drama person or did he start in the theater? Because you have clearly, the chops for that. It's quite obvious.
I started in competitive debate in high school and college. So I was this huge debate nerd for 8 years. And then I wasn't into video producing when I first started. I was just like a writer researcher, and I was like only working on LGBT issues. But I miss the humor that debate lets you have. Like, it's a very nerdy, serious activity, but the really good debaters know that the way that you win at a high level is by like being warm and sweet and goofy and kind of self-deprecating. And so I miss that element that it's harder to do in writing. And I also just like, I'm like a horror film fanatic. I love
the blood was so good when you're like, let me think.
When I was shooting that, I was in my apartment at like 3 a.m. because I didn't want to be loud when there were other people around me who were awake and stuff like that. So there's this moment where I was just like, I had blood on my forehead and I was sitting on my couch in between shoots being like, what the hell am I doing with my life? So I'm glad that it turned out okay, because making it felt totally nuts.
It's so good. And you're doing the best possible thing. You are serving the community with your life. So don't let anyone undermine you saying, oh, you should be working for a bank or some shit.
No, never. I wouldn't be fit for it.
No, me neither. I tried things, but here I am as a news journalist comedian. Let's talk about the actual video. Neoliberalism is a word that gets thrown around a lot. Your video, you give us a really pointed sense of what it is. Can you give a short explanation that, well, most of our viewers know what it is, but the kind of explanation we can give to someone who might be willing to listen to us, whose brain has been Foxified or CNNified, which maybe isn't quite as bad.
Yeah, I mean, the easiest way to describe it is just like, neoliberalism is the idea that the best way to run a country is by letting the free market and like private businesses sort out what resources should go where. It's like the invisible hand idea. It's just like a kind of fancier word for brutal capitalism. This idea that like anytime the government gets involved in anything, it slows things down, it messes it up, and that life is best left to the private sector. And it's like sort of the opposition to it is just really any idea that you think the government should control things. Basically, the opposite of neoliberalism is democracy. It's like the idea that actually we should have a say in things and that we should vote and use our power as citizens to kind of like influence the way the free market is going. But it's just kind of that, like, I think of neoliberalism as like the freshman year economics 101 class, like that kid who's just like the extreme libertarian and just thinks any government makes things worse. That's essentially neoliberalism as an ideology. And the way I talk about it in the video,
all these people are just mad at their moms and they're like, we want freedom. We don't want any. We're just mad at my mom still for telling me I can't go out past midnight when I'm 15.
I do think that at the heart of neoliberalism, there is like a real kind of like tyrannical revulsion against democracy. This idea that like you are in a project that involves millions of people who are not you and have their own interests, and that you're trying to work together, is, if you're somebody with parental issues, or if you're just somebody who craves feeling power over their lives, that's very unappealing. Like the thought of being in project with a bunch of other people. And so neoliberalism gives you this like easy way out of getting to be purely selfish in your motivations and believing that it's actually part of some like sustainable, ideologically coherent way to run a country, which it's not. But neoliberalism, I think it's less of an ideology and more of like a propaganda trick to make you feel okay about telling everyone else to fuck off. And it's an incredibly powerful propaganda trick, and it's like so omnipresent because in America we're just like steeped in corporate propaganda that wants us badly to believe that that's the way the country should work. But it is essentially just a revulsion against the democratic impulse. It's an aversion to the idea that you should have to give a shit about what other people want, and that sometimes what's best for you is not actually best for the community, and that you need to like give a crap about the community too, and not just about yourself. That's it.
It's being sold by a corporation so that they can, externalize all of the costs of, say, polluting the environment while doing business. So it's being sold to people. How do they not realize that they're basically being brainwashed to go against the interests of themselves and their loved ones?
I think actually I'm working on a video about this. I think about this a lot, but I think sort of the main reason is because we just have such a strong mythology, especially in America, about like the cowboy or like the individual as this free person who's only really constrained by this like messy big government. And so like on a human level, especially now that we're all in lockdown and like we can't go outside, I feel and empathize that frustration with like, I'm just not allowed to do whatever I want, that I have to like care for the people right now. And that does suck. And as a human, we have like a natural frustration with it, with like coming to grips with our own powerlessness, that in society, we're just one of many, and that we kind of are rolling in the waves together. And so neoliberalist propaganda and like corporate propaganda is so effective because it speaks to that like frustrated, restrained part of us and says, listen to that part. You are a cowboy. You are the Wild West. And the only thing getting in your way is this like big, messy, slow government. And though I think that propaganda is stupid and obviously like it works in the interest of corporations, I don't fault people for craving that sense of like freedom and liberation from other people. It is a natural impulse, but it's also a natural impulse in like toddlers who steal things on the playground. And we don't tell them like, yes, do that. That's the free hand. You're living the American dream. We say, look, we get it. It sucks, but you have to share. Like you're in a classroom full of kids. You have to share and we have to work together. And if not, this whole thing falls apart. So it is an unhealthy and unnatural corporate response to a very natural human impulse, which is the desire to be selfish, and which I get.
We have people in our chat making comments. Weak Boson says, it is particularly prevalent in the USA for sure. Muckor says, I think it's really a mythos only in America. I don't know anywhere else as individualistic. McCord says, it's very coherent, meaning neoliberalism. Fuck you, got mine is the quote. Yeah, exactly.
And I'll say that I think.
Go ahead.
I think that it is true that the cowboy myth is like particularly pervasive in the US. But I think the more I think about like all of our like as a world, or as a race, our hero stories, like I think like the Greek tragedies, like the Greek hero archetype, it is always kind of this like individual overcoming these impossible odds, or like if you think of like any fantasy story, because I'm a huge D&D nerd, it's always like the brave warrior taking on the evil empire. Like you see it in Star Wars, you see it in like fighting the Dark Emperor. There's always this sense of like the individual versus this mass powerful collective. And so we as humans are fixated with this idea of like individual rebellion against impossible odds, which kind of maps onto like the individual citizen and the government, but it's not quite, because like the government is just the expression of the collective will. Like it's just, you're fighting yourself, dude. Like it's just
really.
And it's the corporation that represents the evil empire a lot more, but I think that sense of like you against the world is a deeply human experience, and so it makes sense that neoliberalism feeds on that so well.
I have a question, and maybe you know this from your studies around when you're making the video. Are there any moms who are neoliberals, like real like moms? You know, it was Mother's Day yesterday, and my husband, I showed this 1,000 times, but I'll show it again. My husband got me this cup, which
oh my gosh.
I know, it's my girl, it's me, it's Bunny, we're hugging.
Precious.
Thank you. In a moment of tenderness captured on photo. And I think, you know, that if you were all for yourself, once you have a kid, and I'm sure this happens for men too, you know, what I'm getting at is it seems like neoliberalism is a guy thing that, and okay, we can bring up Margaret Thatcher, whatever, but she's kind of, you know, whatever. It's a whole different thing. It's just not like a family oriented thing. And anyone who, can you comment on my muddled comment?
Yeah, no, I think you're totally right. I also feel like this is out of my depth because I was like a women's studies minor. And so this is in my head, but I don't feel like an expert about this stuff, but I do get this sense that the like desire for freedom and autonomy is heavily, it's like kind of like chicken for the egg. Is this like a masculine idea, or is this an idea that happens to appeal to men more? But
Both.
you're
Some
right
guy
that like
made it up so that other guys would be like, yeah, fuck
yeah,
hugging.
I think it is certainly true that men are coded into thinking less about care and community because of their role as like primarily fathers and not primarily caregivers, where women are either coded or hardwired to care more about empathy and community and like the health of a system as opposed to the health of the individual. So it is always like, you know, even the cowboy myth is like deeply rooted in male culture and not more broadly. There are obviously female neoliberals and stuff like that, but I think you're right that that motherhood kind of does engender an intrinsic care for community, and for especially for those who are powerless and vulnerable, like babies very often, that does kind of like undermine the core ideology of neoliberalism, which is that everyone should fend for themselves because everyone is capable of fending for themselves. Where if you're a mom and you've been in the role of being forced to take care of a dependent, you know very intuitively that there are going to be times where someone needs help who cannot work and cannot fend for themselves, and that if the caretaker is left alone and is truly without resources, that both the mother and the dependent suffer. That like if you don't give a mom any resources and she can't work because she's caring for someone, that whole, it's not just that the baby falls apart, it's like that community doesn't survive. So yeah, it is a very
the only
like
reason they care about that is because the baby's going to hopefully grow up and, you know, make money for some corporation at some point. That's why
totally.
that's the only reason there's a level of care from neoliberals. Your video is called Coronavirus and America, this America's Death Cult. Why do you call it a death cult?
Because I think it's because of what you just said, essentially, that the natural logical conclusion of neoliberalism is that someone's value is wholly contingent on their market value. That if someone cannot work and cannot produce profit, that they are not valuable to the system, which is true in our neoliberalism. And so if someone becomes sick or unable to work for like any millions of reasons that humans can't work, neoliberalism's answer is you then are not worthy of resources and you can be expended. And you need to find a way to work or it's over. And I think you see that very obviously now with the pressure to send people back to work during a pandemic. Neoliberalism essentially says that like if you cannot work even when you're sick, tough titties, like then you die and you starve to death. And there isn't any space in neoliberalism to answer the question, what happens if you cannot produce value for the market? And so neoliberalism's answer is die. And the obvious answer to that question is, well, we have a safety net, right? Like we all have to pay taxes and develop this government safety net to care for each other. And when some of us can't work, we fall back for them. But safety nets and like care are inefficient. They don't produce any market value, at least not immediately. Like in the long term, we can think like it's better if we all have some rights and take vacations so that we can be better workers. But in a real sense, if you're a business owner, it doesn't help your bottom line.
Work you into the ground and then find somebody else to do your job.
I have no reason to set aside money for your retirement. I have no reason to give you time to rebound or to like take vacation or avoid burnout. You make more profit if you stay here and work until you die. And so the death cult argument is just to point out that the most valuable product in neoliberalism is not human life. It's profit, which can very often come at the expense of human life.
And we're seeing that here. I mean, right here in the pandemic, what we're seeing is a lot of the people who are affected are people, the elderly in nursing homes, and the government has not made, let's see, what's the best way I could put this? They have not had a robust response. And I think that it's specifically because these people who are passing away, most of them are, considered expendable to the government.
Yeah. And I think the neoliberals' answer would be like, the answer to all this is to just create private healthcare and create private care for the elderly. But it ignores the fact that at some point, caring for people just doesn't produce any profit. Like caring for an 80-year-old is not going to eventually produce you an effective worker down the line. That person will just get more sick and require more care. And so you need some value beyond just profit to motivate you. And that value should be like giving a shit about other people, working together, caring for those who can't care for themselves. But there's just really no space for that in neoliberalism or capitalism more broadly. Like, doesn't produce a lot of money.
Exactly. Well, you don't really need it. Once you have the love, you don't need to
Right.
buy that makeup.
Yeah, love when it's like Valentine's Day is very profitable, but love for a sick elderly person is not great for the stock market.
Right. We have a couple of comments both in our Facebook stream and in our Twitch chat about how the government has now kind of been co-opted by the forces of neoliberalism, and so we don't really have a split between democracy that's supposed to be there where we're all collectively making decisions and caring for the people, and the people with the corporations with their neoliberal agendas. Your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean that's the point of anti-government propaganda. It's to get people so disenchanted with the idea of government and to get them so hostile to the idea of like Big Brother that they refuse to participate in the democratic process and don't imagine voting or really any democratic involvement or government as the answer to their problems, which essentially creates a vacuum that corporations can then fill in. The only reason really that corporations are able to place candidates and run candidates that win seats or hijack entire party establishments. And that, I mean, that obviously goes for the Democrats as well as Republicans, because working class people and lay people don't see their values as being represented in the government, or they become suspicious of the government in general. Like, right, they're trained to think of the government as like this big, goofy, big brother person that doesn't give a shit about them. And so they check out. And so neoliberalism's agenda is always to hijack the one institution that actually can challenge corporate power, which is democracy. And so I think, the commenters are correct that we're in this spot where both Republicans and Democrats have become so disillusioned with the idea of government control. And our ability to imagine government power working on behalf of working class people is so limited that we like feel unmotivated to participate. And I mean, I feel that as a Democrat voter who now has to like imagine voting for Biden, of like, it's not easy to be invested in the democratic process when you feel like it doesn't have anything to do with you. It doesn't give a shit about your interests. And that's what corporate America and corporate propaganda wants, because once working class people check out, it's just much easier to seize the levers of power and make government work for you. And I'll say sort of as a second note, neoliberalism is imagined as like this aversion to government control, but in practice it isn't, right? Like, corporations are very heavily invested in getting government power to work for them. They want the government not to restrict them. They want the government to create protections for their intellectual property. They want cops to protect their shit during riots. Like, they're very invested in government power, but it's government power that protects corporate interests and not working class interests. And so, of course, it's inevitable that government eventually becomes a tool of power for corporate interests. And I think that's what's happening in America. And I want so badly to be like, burn it all down. And I think the older I get, the more I'm like, yeah, let's torch this motherfucker. Like, I get so frustrated.
I'm going to torch it by voting for Joe Biden, and then
right. This doesn't feel quite as inspiring.
Exactly.
But yeah, I think that's a natural product of neoliberalism, is always to say government's bad for you, worker, and then that gets in space to be like, all right, government is now working for us.
Carlos Maza, thank you so much for joining us today. Maza is a video producer and media critic. You can find him on Twitter at the best possible Twitter handle I have ever heard, at Gay Wonk. I don't have to even spell it for you.
I got it when I was like 18. I won't talk about it.
Thank you so much. I'm glad you stuck with it. If you're watching us here on YouTube, please subscribe to our channel. We bring you progressive voices and radical voices, and somewhere in the mix of the two, about 10 times a week, different interviews along with a host of other content here on act.tv. So don't forget to subscribe. Thank you very much. Thanks, Carlos, for joining us. I appreciate it so much.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks. It was great.